e il privilegio di ospitare nel vostro mare le forze navali dell'Italia fascista.
When talking of polyspeak, one refers to the language of politicians, characterized by figures of speech, technicalities and complications that make it stereotypical and incomprehensible to most people. Polyspeak has been used for decades to gain consensus and increase one's popularity, while it can work as a filter to study the socio-political and economic landscape of a country. It was during the fascist era that political language reached its peak, and Benito Mussolini's rhetoric is its manifesto. From fascist regime's rise to its definitive fall in 1943, Mussolini's eloquence stood out for its strong persuasive traits. After the proclamation of the Republic in 1946, Italy witnessed a dramatic change in the political and linguistic panorama. With De Gasperi, Togliatti, Moro and Berlinguer among others, proper polyspeak took shape. Words began to play a prominent role in the expression of the innovative political ideologies of the time, while being strategically used to pursue the objectives of the parties. Subsequently, Craxi and Pannella were the first to unlock the full potential of the new television medium, giving rise to the so-called rhetoric of spectacularization. With the Mani Pulite and Tangentopoli scandals, a revolution in the field of political linguistics took place. The magniloquence was quickly replaced by a simplification of speeches, which became more informal and closer to popular jargon. During this period, Berlusconi and Bossi laid the foundations for a trend towards leadership-oriented politics, which would later be consolidated with Beppe Grillo. His blog, chosen as the main channel, allowed the politician to adopt an informal and irreverent communicative style, on the web as in his famous speeches in Italian squares. With the rise of social networks then, we start talking about Polyspeak 2.0, of which Renzi was a pioneer. Political debate on Twitter began to replace the smokiness of the outdated polyspeak, while the linguistic style suffered a dramatic deterioration. Matteo Salvini, former Minister of the Interior and current Federal Secretary of Lega, managed to make the most of social media as a means of building consensus through the creation of a media space where voters can get to know him and get involved in this agenda. This is an impeccable execution of the digital engagement strategy, which combines political propaganda and glimpses of private life into a single social account. Indeed, Salvini has always picked the right tool to give voice to his strong ideas. With 1.2 million followers on Twitter and more than 4.2 million on Facebook, he is the most followed among European politicians. His ability, in this case more as an influencer than as a politician, is due to the rhetoric style he uses. The few and simple concepts at the heart of his statements are frequently repeated and expressed with warm and familiar tones. At the center of his dialectic there are some key words such as friends, enemies, shared values and common sense. When talking about those without common sense, Salvini commonly refers to left-wing politicians, who therefore become enemies. But his digital strategy is impactful also thanks to the help of a team of spin doctors coordinated by Luca Morisi and called La Bestia, also leverages real marketing moves. One example is the Vinci Salvini competition, launched in May 2019, just before European elections. The mechanism was quite simple. The more one interacted with the official page of the politician, the more they went up in the ranking. The prize was, among others, a virtual meeting with Salvini himself. The ability to read the context and choose the most appropriate way of expression can also be observed in the most direct communication, during campaign events and gatherings. In a speech in Rome on December 8, 2018, for example, some of the characteristic features of his communicative style can be highlighted. The tone is informal, at times familiar, full of emotional appeals and revolutionary charge. There is a strategic use of personal pronouns to highlight the gap between friends and enemies, and the epicity of the narrative makes the speech compelling and easy to understand, confirming an effective communicative approach. A similar linguistic style, based on the principle of political incorrectness, is that of Trump, current President of the United States. The similarities between the two are observable since the Italian election campaign in 2018, during which the slogan Prima gli Italiani matched America First, the motto of Trump's first presidential campaign. One of the key factors of his success is with no doubt the strategic use of social networks, where messages are written using simple vocabulary and where the pillars of the leader political agenda often take the form of stinging hashtags. The communication model followed by Trump, as shown by various sentiment analyses, is that of negative campaigning, an electoral strategy aimed at attacking political opponents rather than exalting one's own side. Contempt towards opponents is always expressed in a direct way and usually addressed to the press, accused of spreading fake news. At the heart of Trump's digital strategy there is Twitter, where the president uses abbreviations, superlatives, and emotionally charged formulas. The style, so immediate and unfiltered, is akin to that used in impromptu speeches, while it slightly differs from the approach chosen for institutional events, such as the White House inaugural address. The style is simple, the words are made up of a few syllables, the periods are short and built on paratactic models, fully in line with the Trumpian canons and with the key issues on his political agenda. Especially in the last part, there are numerous references to the religious sphere and to the destiny of America, now seen as isolated from the rest of the world and ready for a rebirth under the leadership of the new president. From a stylistic point of view, the tone becomes progressively emphatic in the conclusion, supported by a rhythmic pace full of pathos, thus withstanding the new Polyspeak standards. Jair Bolsonaro, current Brazilian president who came to power in January 2019, is one of the populist leaders of the conservative right wing who have won the favor of the people in recent years. It is evident how Trump's communicative strategy influenced not only the Salvinian approach, but also that of Bolsonaro. He systematically manages to shift the debate on the issues of public order and corruption, appointing himself as the leader in the Brazilian healing process. Following the Italian model, Bolsonaro promotes a language far removed from Polyspeak, rejecting politically correct formulas in favor of an outspoken rhetoric and informal tones. In this context, the strategy adopted during the election campaign proved to be remarkably effective, especially for its innovative charge. Bolsonaro chose to adopt a coordinated approach on several media channels, including Facebook and WhatsApp. The latter's influence on the outcome of the elections was so massive that it required the intervention of the Brazilian Electoral Tribunal, which started investigations into the alleged spreading of fake news by the Bolsonaro spin doctor team, illegally financed by private companies. The relevance of social networks in the new Brazilian government is proved by the fact that, immediately after the election victory, Bolsonaro chose to address the people on Facebook, even before doing so live. While on the web platform the register was definitely familiar, in the second speech, the one for television broadcasters, the new president used institutional tones. The themes were similar to those of Trump's inaugural address, and although the general approach is far from Polyspeak, Bolsonaro adopted some persuasion techniques typical of the new political language, also in the paraverbal approach. In conclusion, it is evident that the contemporary linguistic models, although far from traditional persuasion techniques, have evolved in parallel and simultaneously, despite differences in languages and in political ideology. The new communication strategies, therefore, boosted by the rapid technological progress, are the main feature of what is now called Polyspeak 2.0.